Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became Principal Nezu's successor? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was not built on fairness. It was built on variables. Izuku Midoriya learned this when he was 4 years old. The doctor had been a variable, a cold, clinical constant in a white coat who adjusted his glasses and delivered the statistical probability of Izuku's dreams turning to ash. 0%. 14 years later, the variable hadn't changed. The world was divided into the 80% who possessed the genetic anomaly known as quirks, and the 20% who were vestiges of an older, obsolete biology. Izuku was the remainder. The rounding error. Scratch. 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 His pen moved across the page of Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13 with a manic intensity that threatened to tear the paper. So, as third-year students, it's time to think seriously about your futures and what you want to do with your lives. The teacher's voice droned from the front of the classroom, a monotonous hum against the frantic processing speed of Izuku's mind. I could pass out some career aptitude tests, but... The teacher paused, snatching the collective attention of the room. Why bother? I know you all want to go into the hero track. The room exploded into a cacophony of cheering and quirk usage. Stones levitated, fingers extended, eyes glowed. It was a chaotic display of power, a microcosm of the society outside these walls. Izuku didn't look up. His eyes were locked on a diagram of Kamui Woods. Preemptive binding lacquer. Weakness to thermal fluctuation. If paired with a fire-type hero, efficiency drops by 40% due to caution protocols. Synergy rating with Empty Lady, low, due to collateral damage risks involving size disparity. Hey, teach! The voice cut through the noise like a jagged explosion. Don't lump me in with these extras, Katsuki Bakugo. The apex predator of Aldera Junior High. Izuku flinched, his pen halting. He didn't need to look to visualize the scene. Bakugo, feet on the desk, a sneer that defied gravity, and an ego that defied logic. You're all aiming for some sidekick gig at best, Bakugo scoffed. I'm the real deal. I'm going to surpass All Might and become the top hero. My name will be etched into the gross national product rankings. Oh right, the teacher mused, looking at his clipboard. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, aren't you? The silence that followed was absolute. Then, the murmurs started. UA was the holy grail. The acceptance rate was a statistical nightmare. It was the training ground for the gods. That's exactly why you're all just pebbles on the side of the road. Bakugo shouted, jumping onto his desk. I aced the mock tests. I'm the only one here with the stuff for UA. Actually, the teacher interrupted, his voice devoid of empathy. Midoriya put down UA as his first choice, too. The silence returned, heavier this time. It felt like the drop in atmospheric pressure before a storm. Izuku shrank into his shoulders. Variable, social stigma. Consequence, imminent hostility. DKU. An explosion rocked Izuku's desk, sending him tumbling backward onto the floor. The smell of burnt caramel, nitroglycerin sweat, filled his nose. Bakugo loomed over him, smoke curling from his palms. Forget the crappy quirks these extras have, Bakugo snarled, his eyes wide with a terrifying mix of rage and incredulity. You're totally quirkless. You think you can rub shoulders with me? Wait, Kaken! Izuku scrambled back, his hands raised in a placating gesture that he knew, statistically, had a 0% success rate. It's not like I'm trying to compete with you. It's been my dream since I was little. And well, there's no harm in trying. Trying? Bakugo's hands crackled. What can you do? Take the entrance exam just to die? What are you capable of, you damn nerd? Being a punching bag? The class laughed. It was a reflexive, pack mentality sound. Izuku looked down. What am I capable of? He knew the melting point of the metal alloy in the UA robot chassis based on leaked schematics from 3 years ago. He knew the patrol routes of every top 10 hero in Muzurifu. He knew that Bakugo's right hook was slightly slower than his left because he favored his dominant blasting hand, creating a 0.4 second opening in his guard. He knew all of this. But in a society that valued force over formula, knowledge wasn't power. It was trivia. The incident with the notebook happened quickly. Bakugo snatched it, burned it, and tossed it out the window into the koi pond. If you want to be a hero that badly, Bakugo had said, smiling with a cruelty that didn't match his age, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. Izuku stood outside the school gate, staring at the koi pond. He fished the notebook out. The fish were nibbling on the edges. Stupid fish, he mumbled, shaking the water off. This isn't food. It's data. He walked home, the damp notebook clutching to his chest like a shield. His mind replayed Bakugo's words. Swan dive. It was an illogical suggestion. Reincarnation was scientifically unproven. The probability of retaining consciousness or memories was nil. It was a rhetorical device meant to inflict psychological damage, and it's working, Izuku thought bitterly. He turned into the underpass. It was a shortcut, slightly darker, slightly quieter. The acoustics were excellent for brooding. He flipped open the wet pages of the notebook. The ink had run, turning his drawing of Empty Lady into a smudged Rorschach test. Is it really over before it began? He whispered to the damp concrete. A sound came from the manhole cover behind him. A wet, sliding sound. Viscosity. Fluid dynamics shifting under pressure. Izuku turned. A massive, undulating mass of dark sludge erupted from the sewers. Eyes, bulging, frantic yellow, floated in the muck. A mouth formed, jagged and wide. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed. Izuku's brain stalled for a microsecond, then rebooted into overdrive. Villain. Fluid body type. No solid focal point. Physical trauma ineffective. Suffocation risk, 100%. Don't worry, the sludge lunged. I'm just going to take over your body. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Izuku tried to run, but the variable of surprise was too great. The sludge slammed into him, cold and smelling of sewage and rot. It forced itself into his nose, his mouth. He couldn't breathe. His hands clawed at the fluid, fingers passing through uselessly. Liquid state, his mind screamed as his vision blurred. Non-Newtonian? No, too viscous. He's trying to hide. He's running from someone. Who? You can't grab me. The villain laughed. I'm fluid. Weakness. Izuku's brain fired rapidly, even as the oxygen deprivation set in. Every quirk has a biological limitation. Fluidity requires cohesion. To maintain a form, he needs surface tension. Where is the core? No core visible. Eyes. Mouth. The sensors are solid. They have to be solid to receive light and sound. His vision went black. Clang! The manhole cover flew into the air. Have no fear! A voice like a sonic boom. A figure silhouetted in the light of the tunnel entrance. For I am here, All Might. The symbol. The constant. Izuku's consciousness faded just as the wind pressure from a Texas smash obliterated the sludge, scattering the villain like rain against a windshield. When Izuku woke up, he was being slapped. Lightly but repeatedly. Hey! Hey! Good! He opened his eyes. All Might was there. In person. Blocking out the sun. Thought I lost you there. The hero boomed, his smile blinding. Izuku scrambled back. Panic and awe fighting for dominance. All Might. You. Wait, an autograph. I need a. He grabbed his soggy notebook. All Might had already signed it. The signature took up 2 whole pages. Thank you? I'll treasure this. It's an heirloom. No problem, citizen. Now, I must take this villain to justice. All Might patted a soda bottle filled with the unconscious sludge villain. Wait. Already? Izuku reached out. I have so many questions. How do you modify your center of gravity during a Detroit smash? Is your muscle density different from a standard strength quirk? A pro battles time as well as evil. Stay out of trouble. All Might launched himself into the sky, creating a shockwave that nearly knocked Izuku over again. Izuku stood there, hand outstretched. The interaction had lasted less than 2 minutes. He's gone. Izuku looked at his hand. Then he looked at the sky. And then, he realized something. He was steaming. Izuku's brow furrowed. Smoke. Like the radiator of an overheated car. And his trajectory, looking at the angle of his jump, he wasn't flying. He was jumping. Meaning he lands? Where? Without thinking, Izuku's legs moved. But this time, his brain was leading the charge. He wasn't chasing a fanboy dream. He was chasing an anomaly. Izuku lost the trail. He wandered the streets of Muzurifu, dejected. He had met God, and God had been in a rush. And then, the explosion happened. It wasn't a normal explosion. It was the sound of air being ripped apart by heat. Izuku ran toward the smoke. It was the Tatooine shopping district. When he arrived, the scene was a nightmare of fire and chaos. Heroes were there, Death Arms, Backdraft, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady. But they were standing around. They were paralyzed. Why aren't they going in? Izuku muttered, pushing through the crowd. Then he saw it. The sludge villain. The soda bottle must have fallen. And now, the villain had a new hostage. Explosions rippled from the center of the sludge. Bakugo. It's like a minefield in there. Death Arms shouted. I can't get close. I have no room to grow. Empty Lady complained. The fire is too intense. Kamui Woods yelled. Izuku stood at the police tape, his eyes widening. They're waiting. They're waiting for someone with the right quirk matchup. But there was no one. Izuku looked at the sludge. He looked at the explosions. Variable 1, the villain. He needs a host to hide. He's panicked. He's using Bakugo's quirk to create a barrier of flame, keeping the pros back. Variable 2, the host. Bakugo is struggling. He's creating air pockets with his explosions, but he's suffocating. The more he explodes, the more oxygen he burns. He has maybe 60 seconds before hypoxia causes brain damage. Variable 3, the heroes. They are reactive. They are treating this as a standoff. It's not a standoff. It's an execution. Izuku's eyes locked with Bakugo's. For the first time in his life, Bakugo didn't look angry. He looked terrified. He looked like he was asking for help. Izuku didn't think about being a hero. He didn't think about his lack of a quirk. He thought about fluid dynamics. His legs moved. He ducked under the tape. Hey! Come back here, kid! You'll die! Death Arms screamed. Izuku didn't hear him. He was running, his backpack clutched in his hand. The sludge is fluid. Izuku's mind raced as the heat singed his eyebrows. He's shifting constantly to avoid the explosions. But to aim the explosions, he has to keep his eyes fixed. The villain saw Izuku coming. You again? A tendril of sludge lashed out. Izuku slid. He didn't dodge. He dropped his center of gravity and slid on the slick pavement, the tendril passing inches above his hair. He stood up, 10 meters away. He swung his yellow backpack by the strap. Weight, 4.5 kilograms. Distance, 10 meters. Wind resistance from the fire updraft, significant. He didn't throw it at the villain's mass. He threw it at the villain's perception. The bag sailed through the air, rotating perfectly. It slammed directly into the sludge villain's left eye. Arg! The villain flinched, the fluid surface tension breaking around the sensitive organ. The slime receded from Bakugo's mouth for a split second to cover the injury. Kaken! Izuku screamed. Breathe! Bakugo gasped, sucking in air. Izuku didn't stop. He was close now. He began clawing at the sludge, but not randomly. The eyes! Izuku screamed back at the pros, his voice cracking but carrying over the roar of the fire. He can't solidify his whole body. His eyes and mouth are vulnerable. Disperse his focus. What the hell are you doing here, Deku? Bakugo coughed. My legs moved on their own. Izuku cried, tears streaming down his face, but his hands were busy digging into the muck, trying to find leverage. You looked like you were asking for help. The villain recovered. The eye healed. A massive wave of sludge rose up, forming a guillotine blade. I'm going to crush you. Izuku looked up. Game over. I calculated the distraction, but I didn't calculate the exit strategy. He braced for death, but death didn't come. A hand grabbed Izuku's arm. A hand grabbed Bakugo's arm. I really am pathetic, a deep voice rumbled, vibrating through Izuku's bones. I admonished you for not having a quirk, and yet. I wasn't practicing what I preached. Blood sprayed from All Might's mouth, but his smile was ferocious. He was no longer the skeleton. He was the mountain, Detroit. The wind pressure alone pushed the flames back. Smash! The punch connected with the air pressure, creating an updraft so violent it changed the local weather. The sludge was vaporized. The clouds above spiraled. Rain began to fall. The crowd went silent. Then they erupted. The aftermath was a study in contrast. The pro-heroes surrounded Bakugo, praising him. That quirk is amazing. You held out so long. You're going to be a great sidekick one day. On the other side of the police line, Izuku was on his knees, surrounded by Death Arms and Kamui Woods. Are you insane? Death Arms shouted, pointing a thick finger at Izuku's nose. You have no quirk. You were a liability. You could have gotten yourself killed and made the hostage situation worse. We had to worry about saving you instead of the kid. Kamui Woods added. Izuku stared at the pavement. He nodded. I know. I'm sorry, but I wasn't a liability. A small, rebellious voice in his head whispered. I created the opening. Bakugo took his first breath in 2 minutes because of my bag. You were all standing there watching him suffocate. He accepted the scolding. It was the logical outcome. Authority figures disliked variables they couldn't control. Eventually, the police dismissed him. The sun was setting. The adrenaline had crashed, leaving Izuku feeling hollowed out. He walked away from the crowd, heading toward the quieter streets. He needed to go home. He needed to apologize to his mom. He needed to rethink his entire life. Young man. The voice was not All Might's. It was high-pitched, polite, and came from a black sedan with tinted windows that had pulled up silently alongside him. Izuku stopped. Yes? The rear window rolled down. Izuku blinked. Sitting in the back seat was an animal. A white mouse. A bear? A dog? It was dressed in a pristine suit with a red tie. It held a teacup in one paw, despite the lack of any visible tea service in the car. Am I a mouse? A dog? A bear? The creature asked, smiling. A scar ran down one of its eyes. My identity is one of the world's great mysteries. But you can call me Principal Nezu. Izuku's heart stopped. Principal Nezu. The head of UA High. The smartest being on the planet. The user of the quirk high specs. P. Principal Nezu? Izuku squeaked. IUY. Get in, Midoriya-kun, Nezu said, gesturing to the empty seat beside him. We have much to discuss regarding fluid dynamics and the aerodynamic properties of a standard middle school backpack. Izuku hesitated. Stranger danger protocols were screaming in his head. But this was UA. This was the dream. He opened the door and slid in. The interior smelled of chamomile and expensive leather. Driver, circle the block. Slowly, Nezu commanded. The partition went up, sealing them off from the driver. Nezu took a sip of tea. He placed the cup on a small, gyroscopic coaster that kept it perfectly level. Then, he reached into his suit jacket and pulled out something wet and charred. Izuku gasped. My notebook, volume 13, Nezu said, flipping it open with a paw. I retrieved it from the scene while All Might was busy signing autographs. I've been reading it. Izuku turned bright red. It's just scribbles. It's embarrassing. Please don't. Page 42, Nezu interrupted. You analyzed the sludge villain. You noted that his liquid body required a high viscosity to maintain grappling pressure, and therefore, a disruption of his sensory inputs would cause a reflex action of surface tension retraction. Nezu looked up, his beady black eyes boring into Izuku's soul. You wrote this after the first attack, but before the second one. Correct? Why yes, Izuku stammered. I was trying to figure out how I could have escaped if All Might hadn't shown up. And then, Nezu continued, during the fire, you applied this theory. You threw your bag at his eye. Not his body. His eye. Why? Because... Izuku swallowed. Because solids hurt soft tissue. If he flinched, the sludge around his mouth would have to loosen to cover the eye. It's just biology. Nezu closed the notebook. The sound was soft, but it felt like a gavel striking a podium. The pro-heroes on the scene saw a monster they couldn't hit, Nezu said softly. You saw a physics puzzle you could solve. I caused trouble, Izuku whispered. Death Arms said. Death Arms is a man whose solution to every problem is to punch it, Nezu said dismissively. If the problem cannot be punched, he enters a state of buffering. Like a computer with a slow processor. Nezu leaned forward. The air in the car grew heavy. Midoriya-kun. Tell me. Why do you want to be a hero? To save people, Izuku said instantly. To be like All Might. To bring a smile to everyone's face. A noble goal. But tell me, do you think muscles are the only way to save people? I'm quirkless, Izuku admitted, the shame burning his throat. So, without power I can't. Power, Nezu mused. An interesting word. All Might has power. Endeavor has power. But tell me, Midoriya-kun, who decides where All Might is deployed? Who manages the budget that pays for the damage Empty Lady causes? Who analyzes the crime trends to predict where the next villain attack will occur? Izuku blinked. The police? The Hero Commission? Administrators, Nezu corrected. Thinkers. Strategists. Nezu tapped his own temple. I watched the news feed. I saw you run in. It was foolish. Suicidal. Illogical. Izuku flinched. However, Nezu grinned, and it was a feral, terrifying expression. It was also the only successful tactical move made on that battlefield until All Might arrived. You processed the chaos faster than 5 pro-heroes combined. Nezu extended a paw. Midoriya Izuku. Muscles can be built by anyone with enough protein and discipline. But a mind that processes chaos this efficiently? That is rare. That is a variable I cannot ignore. What are you saying? I am offering you a mentorship, Nezu said. Not to teach you how to punch, though we will address your physical frailty, but to teach you how to think, to teach you how to dismantle villains not with your fists, but with your mind. I want you to be my personal student. Izuku's jaw dropped. Tears began to well up in his eyes. You think I can be a hero? Even without a quirk? Nezu paused. He took another sip of tea. I think, Nezu said carefully, that if you enter the hero world without guidance, you will die within a week. But if you learn from me, you might just become the most dangerous person in Japan. Before Izuku could respond, the car screeched to a halt. Sir, the driver's voice came over the intercom. We have an obstruction, Nezu sighed. He found us quickly. The door was ripped open. Not by a villain, but by a skeletal hand. All Might stood there. He was no longer in his buff form. He was a lanky, emaciated man with sunken eyes, coughing up a small amount of blood. Steam rolled off his shoulders. All Might? Izuku shrieked. You deflated, young Midoriya. All Might wheezed, ignoring the transformation reveal. I have been looking for you. I ran from the reporters, but I lost you in the alleys, and then I saw the principal's car. All Might looked at Nezu. Principal Nezu. What are you doing with this boy? I could ask you the same thing, Toshinori, Nezu said coolly. Izuku looked between them. Toshinori? They know each other? Of course they do. All Might works at UA. All Might looked at Izuku, his eyes burning with intensity. Young man. I saw what you did back there. You moved when everyone else froze. You looked fear in the face and acted. All Might placed a hand on his chest. Top heroes have stories about their school days. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku began to cry. He knew what was coming. He had waited his whole life to hear it. That happened to you today, All Might said softly. You can be a hero. Izuku sobbed, burying his face in his hands. However, Nezu cut in sharply, ruining the moment. All Might blinked. Principal? He has no quirk, Toshinori, Nezu said, his voice hard. He has the heart of a hero, yes. But if you give him your power without training his mind, he will break. Not just his bones, but his spirit. Izuku looked up, confused. Give him my power? All Might stiffened. Principal, I haven't explained that part yet. Oh, please, Nezu waved a paw. The boy is a genius analyst. He already realized you were limiting your air time to avoid impact stress. He knows something is wrong with you. All Might sighed, deflating further. He looked at Izuku. I have a secret, young Midoriya. My quirk, it can be passed down. Izuku's brain stopped. Passed down? Genetic transfer is impossible post-birth. Unless, retroviral integration? Energy stockpiling transfer? It is called one for All Might explained. And I want you to inherit it. Izuku sat there stunned. The greatest hero in the world was offering him the greatest power in the world. But Nezu interjected again. He hopped out of the car and stood between All Might and Izuku. All Might wants to give you a sword, Midoriya-kun, Nezu said, looking up at the skeletal hero. A very heavy, very dangerous sword. He wants to train your body to lift it. Nezu turned to Izuku. I want to teach you where to swing it. I want to teach you how to win the war so you never have to swing it. Nezu looked at All Might. Tashinori, you are looking for a symbol of peace. A successor to your strength. Yes, All Might nodded. I am looking for a successor to my chair, Nezu said, his grin widening. I am looking for the next administrator of justice. The principal looked back at Izuku. So, Midoriya Izuku. You have a choice. Or rather, a compromise. All Might will train your body to hold the power. I will train your mind to wield it. You will be the symbol of peace, but you will also be the Chimera's apprentice. Izuku looked at All Might, the man he worshipped. He looked at Nezu, the creature who had validated his intellect when no one else would. He wiped his tears. He stood up from the car seat. He didn't just see a beach to clean or a villain to punch. He saw a path. A difficult, complex, terrifying path. Izuku's voice shook, then steadied. I want to do it. I want to learn everything. I want to be a hero who can save everyone, with a smile and a plan. Nezu cackled, a sound that made the driver flinch. Excellent. Prepare yourself, Midoriya-kun. Tomorrow, we begin cleaning Takoba Municipal Beach Park. But we won't just be moving trash. Nezu tapped the notebook in Izuku's hand. We will be calculating the most efficient fulcrum points for every refrigerator on that coastline. And if you get the math wrong, you do extra push-ups. All Might laughed, giving a thumbs up. Welcome to your hero academia, young man. As the sun fully set, casting long shadows over the three of them, Izuku clutched his notebook. He felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. It wasn't just a quirk he was inheriting. It was a legacy of chaos, and the logic required to control it. The variable had changed. The equation of the future was being rewritten. And Izuku thought, his eyes gleaming with a newfound sharpness, am going to solve it. The smell of Takoba Municipal Beach Park was a complex cocktail of rotting seaweed, rusted iron, and the salty despair of illegal dumping. To the average citizen, it was an eyesore. To Izuku Midoriya, it was a physics textbook waiting to be solved. It was 5 a.m. The horizon was bleeding a pale, bruised purple. Midoriya-kun! Principal Nezu's voice chirped from atop a stack of discarded tires. The small mammal was dressed in a miniature windbreaker, and holding a megaphone that was almost as large as his head. Please calculate the tensile strength required to move that refrigerator without dragging it against the sand. Friction is the enemy of efficiency. Izuku stood shirtless in the sand, his body trembling, not from cold, but from exhaustion. Beside him stood All Might, currently in his buff form, posing heroically despite holding a rusted truck axle. Just smash it, young Midoriya. All Might boomed, flashing a thumbs up. Put your back into it. Plus ultra, no smashing. Nezu corrected through the megaphone, the sound echoing off the trash heaps. If he relies on lumbar strength alone, he will herniate a disc before he inherits one for all. Use the fulcrum, Midoriya-kun. Archimedes is your ally. Izuku looked at the refrigerator. It was a 1990s model, heavy with lead lining and CFCs. It was half buried in the sand. Mass, approximately 150 kilograms. Izuku's mind raced, his murmuring blending with the sound of the waves. Friction coefficient of wet sand is high. Dragging it is illogical. Lifting it directly puts strain on the spinal erectors. I need leverage. He scanned the immediate area. He spotted a long, sturdy iron pipe and a large, flat rock. I need a Class 1 lever, Izuku muttered. He jammed the rock into the sand near the fridge. He wedged the pipe under the appliance's base. All might! Izuku yelled. Can you stabilize the fulcrum? I don't know what that means, but yes. All Might placed a massive boot on the rock. Izuku grabbed the far end of the pipe. Force equals mass times acceleration, but leverage multiplies force. He pulled down. The pipe groaned, but the refrigerator popped out of its sandy grave with a wet sucking sound. It rolled onto its side. Excellent! Nezu clapped his paws. Now, calculate the most efficient path to the truck based on the terrain gradient. You have 30 seconds before I deduct points from your hypothetical entrance exam score. Yes, sir! This was the routine. For 10 months, Izuku Midoriya lived in a dichotomy of muscle and mind. The mornings were physical. Under All Might's supervision, he built the vessel. He ran until his lungs burned, ate the dense protein meals aimed at bulking his frame, and learned the basics of hand-to-hand combat. But unlike the standard American dream plan All Might had originally drafted, Nezu had edited the document with a red pen until it looked like a crime scene. Every lift had to be justified by biomechanics. Every movement had to be efficient. Why lift the tire? Nezu would ask while sipping tea from a thermos. To build shoulder muscles? Izuku would pant. Wrong. To understand the shifting center of gravity of an asymmetrical object. Try again. The evenings were worse. The evenings were spent in the principal's office at UA High. The office was a sanctuary of climate-controlled air and the scent of Earl Grey. It was also a torture chamber. Check, Nezu said pleasantly. Izuku stared at the chessboard. It wasn't a normal chessboard. It was a three-dimensional board with 3 layers of glass, allowing pieces to move vertically as well as horizontally. It was a nightmare of spatial awareness. If I move my knight to level 2, e5, Izuku muttered, his eyes darting, you'll counter with your bishop on level 3. But that exposes your queen to, no, that's a trap. You're baiting me. Time is a resource, Midoriya-kun, Nezu hummed, pouring a fresh cup. Villains do not wait for you to deliberate. Tick-tock. Izuku moved his rook. Checkmate in 4 moves, Nezu said instantly, sliding a pawn forward. Izuku slumped in his chair, groaning. I didn't see the vertical flank. You were too focused on the immediate threat, Nezu lectured, climbing onto his desk to look Izuku in the eye. You played the hero, rushing in to save your king. But a king is just a piece. The goal is to control the board. Nezu tapped the glass surface with a claw. Let us switch to a hypothetical scenario. Simulation 44B. Izuku straightened up. This was the administrator training. Scenario, Nezu began, his eyes gleaming. A villain has taken a hostage in a crowded train station. The villain possesses a quirk that emits high-frequency radiation. If you engage, the radiation spikes, potentially giving cancer to 300 civilians within a 10-year timeframe. If you do not engage, he kills the hostage. You are the ranking hero on the scene. What do you do? Izuku swallowed. I evacuate the civilians first to minimize exposure. Too slow. The hostage is dead. I use a ranged attack to incapacitate him instantly. Risky. If he maintains consciousness for even a second, the radiation spike occurs. Also, you miss the political fallout. The hostage is the daughter of a major pro-hero support item manufacturer. If she dies, stock prices plummet, 3 support companies go bankrupt, and hero gear quality drops by 15% nationwide for 2 years, leading to a projected 200 hero deaths. Izuku stared at the small animal in horror. That's insane. There's no right answer. There is always an answer, Nezu corrected. It is just rarely a clean one. You must weigh the immediate life against the statistical future. The Hero Commission would tell you to sacrifice the hostage to save the 300 from radiation. All Might would tell you to smash the villain and hope for a miracle. What would you do? Izuku asked. I would have hacked the station's ventilation system 5 minutes prior to vent the radiation upward, while simultaneously negotiating with the villain to lower his heart rate, thereby dampening his quirk output. Nezu smiled. I would win before the fight started. Izuku picked up a pawn, turning it over in his fingers. Win before the fight starts. Preemptive logic, Nezu said. That is what I am teaching you. All Might saves the day. You and I? We ensure the day doesn't need saving in the first place. But when it does, Nezu's expression hardened. You must be the one to make the hard call. The call that keeps the pillars of society from collapsing. You are not just inheriting a quirk, Midoriya. You are inheriting the responsibility of order. 3 weeks before the exam, the beach was pristine. The mountains of trash were gone, replaced by the sparkling coastline and a sunrise that felt earned. Izuku stood atop the seawall, screaming his lungs out, his shirt gone, revealing a torso of compact, dense muscle. He wasn't the hulking mass All Might was, nor was he the raw wire he used to be. He was built like a gymnast, lean, efficient, functional. Oh my goodness! All Might yelled, transforming into his buff form in a cloud of steam. You did it! You really did it! He completed the task within the projected time frame. Nezu nodded, checking a pocket watch. With a 4% margin of error. Acceptable. Principal, you're a harsh taskmaster. All Might laughed. He pulled a single golden hair from his head. The mood shifted. The wind seemed to stop. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice dropping to a solemn register. You have built the vessel. You have sharpened the mind. Now you must accept the power. He held out the hair. Eat this. Izuku blinked. Surely there is a more sanitary method of DNA transfer? Perhaps a blood sample injected intravenously? Or, just eat the hair, Midoriya-kun. Nezu sighed. Sometimes the old ways are the fastest. Izuku grimaced, took the hair, and swallowed it. He gagged slightly. It tastes like hairspray. And now, Nezu said, clapping his paws, to the lab. The lab? All Might asked. Usually, we just wait a few hours and then, well, clenched butt cheeks and smash, right? Absolutely not, Nezu said, horrified. We are not giving a nuclear reactor to a novice and telling him to hit the gas. We are going to calibrate the output. The UA infirmary was quiet, save for the hum of machinery. Recovery girl sat by a console, looking grumpy. I don't like this, she muttered. Experimenting on a student. It is not an experiment, Chio, Nezu said, adjusting a pair of goggles. It is a systems check. Izuku sat on the biobed, wired up to a dozen sensors. He felt different. A hum beneath his skin. A vibration in his marrow. Okay, Midoriya-kun, Nezu said. All Might describes the sensation as claiming up or a torch. Forget that. Those are abstract feelings. I want you to visualize a hydraulic system. Hydraulics? Izuku asked. Yes. Your body is the machine. The power is the fluid. If you open the valve fully, 100% pressure, into a pipe that isn't rated for it, what happens? The pipe bursts, Izuku said. My bones break. Correct. All Might has pipes made of titanium. You have pipes made of PVC. You cannot handle the full pressure. You need to use a regulator. Nezu pulled up a monitor screen showing a silhouette of Izuku's body. Don't try to summon the power in a specific point, like your fist. That creates a pressure spike. Instead, Nezu made a flowing motion with his paws. Circulate the fluid. Pressurize the entire system evenly. Low pressure. Keep it constant. Izuku closed his eyes. He ignored the anxiety. He ignored the image of All Might punching the sky. Hydraulics, he thought. A closed loop. The pump is my heart. The fluid is the energy. Don't force it. Let it flow. He felt the spark. Usually, he would have grabbed it and shoved it. This time, he gently guided it. He imagined the energy coating his veins, reinforcing his muscles, tightening his skin. 1%. 2%. Hold it. A soft, green lightning crackled around his body. His hair floated slightly. Oh? All Might leaned in, eyes wide. He's not breaking. Readings are stable, Recovery Girl said, sounding impressed. Output is low. Maybe 2%. But it's distributed across his whole muscular system. Izuku opened his eyes. He felt lighter. Stronger. It wasn't the overwhelming power of a god. It was the hum of a well-oiled engine. I call it full cowl, Izuku whispered. A sensible name, Nezu noted. At this percentage, you won't be leveling buildings. But you will be faster than a gold medalist sprinter and stronger than a heavyweight boxer. For the entrance exam, that is more than enough. Nezu hopped onto the bed, looking Izuku in the eye. Listen to me, Midoriya. The entrance exam is designed to test destructive capability. It favors flashy quirks. It is a flawed system, one I have been trying to change with the board of directors for years. Nezu grinned. I want you to dismantle that exam. Don't just pass it. Show them that the test itself is broken. The entrance exam. The written exam was, frankly, boring. Izuku finished 40 minutes early. The questions on quirk history, law, and mathematics were trivial compared to the nights he spent debating Nezu on the socio-economic impact of the Villain Registration Act. He spent the remaining time analyzing the structural integrity of the auditorium ceiling. Then came the practical. The candidates gathered in front of the towering gates of Battle Center B. The tension was palpable. Izuku wore a simple green tracksuit, modified with reinforced soles and elbow pads he had designed himself, and Nightie's former sidekick had helped fabricate. He saw Uraraka Ochako in the crowd, looking nervous. He saw Ida Tenya doing stretches that looked like semaphore, and he saw Bakugo, vibrating with aggression. Deku, Bakugo growled as he walked past. Don't get in my way. I won't save you when you cry. Izuku adjusted his gloves. He looked at Bakugo, really looked at him, posture tense. Shoulders hunched. He's putting too much pressure on his quadriceps before the start. He'll explode out of the gate, but his stamina will dip at the 6-minute mark. I won't cry, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. And check your left gauntlet. The strap is loose. It'll affect your aim. Bakugo blinked, looking down. The strap was indeed loose. He looked back up, but Izuku was already walking away. For the first time, the explosion boy looked unsettled. Start! Present Mix's voice screamed from the tower. There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! Run! Die! The crowd hesitated. Izuku didn't. Green sparks. He activated full cowl. 3%. He didn't run, he dashed. He was a blur of green lightning, leaving the rest of the examinees in the dust. He was the first one through the gate. The urban setting was realistic. The robots were already deployed. A one-pointer, a swift, wheeled drone, careened around the corner, targeting him. Target speed, 30 km per hour. Armor, lightweight alloy. Weakness, the gyro stabilizer in the central wheel. Izuku didn't punch it. He didn't stop. As the robot lunged, Izuku slid underneath it. He reached up, grabbed the exposed wiring of the stabilizer, and yanked. The robot jerked, lost balance, and flipped over, crashing into a wall. 1 point. He kept moving. A 3-pointer, a massive, hulking machine, burst through a building. Its missiles locked onto him. Too big to grapple. Too tough to punch without risking a finger fracture at 3%. Izuku scanned the alley. A fire escape ladder. He jumped. With full cowl, he cleared the 10 feet effortlessly. He kicked off the wall, landing on the robot's shoulder. The robot flailed, trying to grab him. Visual sensors are located on the neck, Izuku muttered. He didn't smash the sensors. He ripped off the panel covering the robot's IFF, identification friend or foe, receiver. He then crossed 2 wires. The robot stopped. Its lights turned from red to yellow. It spun around and punched a 2-pointer that was sneaking up behind it. System disruption, Izuku smiled. Let the enemy do the work. The examiner's observation room was silent. Who is that kid? Midnight asked, leaning forward. He's not destroying them, he's disabling them. He's hacking them physically. Candidate 2234, Nezu said, sipping his tea. He was practically vibrating with glee. Izuku Midoriya. Note his situational awareness. He isn't engaging targets he can't defeat efficiently. He is controlling the battlefield. All Might sat in the back, gripping the arms of his chair. He's actually doing it. He's not using the smash. He's using the brain. Back on the field, it was chaos. Explosions everywhere. Bakugo was flying through the air, blasting robots to scrap. He was winning by brute force. Izuku was winning by flow. He dismantled a robot's leg joint with a discarded pipe. He tricked 2 robots into colliding. He used a spool of high-tensile wire he salvaged from a destroyed one-pointer to create a tripwire across a main avenue, disabling 4 robots at once. He had 45 points. It wasn't the highest score, but he hadn't taken a single hit. He hadn't broken a sweat. Then, the ground shook. The 0-pointer. It was colossal. Taller than the skyscrapers. It punched the ground, and the shockwaves shattered windows for 3 blocks. Dust billowed like a sandstorm. This is crazy. Run! It's huge! The other examinees fled. It was the logical response. The 0-pointer was an obstacle to be avoided, not fought. Izuku turned to run. Nezu said survival is the priority. There are no points for this. Retreat is the only logical. Oh, a voice. Izuku froze. His head snapped back. Through the dust, he saw her. The girl with the round face. Uraraka. She was trapped under rubble. The 0-pointer was looming over her. Its massive treads were grinding the pavement, seconds away from crushing her. Variable change. Izuku's logic center screamed, "You cannot destroy that robot. It is too big. Your output is capped at 5% safely. If you punch it, you will likely break all 4 limbs and still fail to stop its momentum." But his heart screamed, "Save her." He looked at the robot. He looked at the girl. He looked at the environment. "I don't need to stop it. I need to divert it." The 0-pointer was top-heavy. Its center of mass was high. Izuku spotted the loose cable he had used earlier, the high-tensile wire from the one-pointer. One end was still wrapped around a reinforced lamppost. Length, 20 meters. Tensile strength, enough to hold a tank. Izuku grabbed the free end of the wire. One for all. 8%. He pushed his limit. The green lightning flared violently. Pain shot through his legs, but he ignored it. He sprinted toward the 0-pointer. Not away. Toward it. "Hey! Giant trash can!" He jumped. He soared through the air, aiming for the 0-pointer's front axle. The robot ignored him, focusing on the girl. Izuku dove between the treads. It was suicide. If he slipped, he was paced. He wrapped the wire around the front left axle. He looped it tight. Then, he kicked off the chassis, shooting out the other side. He landed, skidding on the asphalt. He held the wire. The other end was anchored to the lamppost behind the robot. Pivot point established. Izuku screamed, his teeth gritted. As the robot moved forward, the wire went taut. It snapped tight against the left axle. The left tread jammed, but the right tread kept moving. Physics took the wheel. With the left side anchored and the right side powering forward, the massive robot didn't stop, it twisted. The momentum forced the entire chassis to pivot violently to the left. The 0-pointer groaned, metal screeching against metal. It tilted. It wobbled, and then, with a sound like a collapsing building, it fell. It crashed onto its side, missing Uraraka by 10 feet. The impact shook the entire city block. Silence descended on the testing ground. Izuku stood there, panting. His arms were smoking. The wire had cut into his gloves, bleeding slightly. But his bones were intact. He walked over to Uraraka. He lifted the rubble off her leg effortlessly. "Are you capable of bipedal movement?" he asked, breathless. Uraraka stared at him, eyes wide. She looked at the fallen giant. She looked at the thin wire. She looked at him. You tripped it?" she whispered. "You tripped a giant robot?" "It had a high center of gravity," Izuku muttered, helping her up. "It was structurally unstable." "Time's up." President Mike yelled. Izuku collapsed. Not from injury, but from the sheer mental load of calculating torque while facing death. The verdict. 1 week later, Izuku sat at his desk in his room. The letter was there. He opened it. A holographic disc fell out. "BZZZT. I am here." All Might appeared in the projection. "Young Midoriya. You have done well. The written exam? Perfect score. A historical achievement. And the practical?" The video cut to footage of Izuku tripping the 0-pointer. "You had 45 villain points. A respectable score. But," All Might leaned into the camera, "the entrance exam is not just about destroying mock villains. A hero's job is to save. And you, young Midoriya, saved a life not with brute force, but with quick thinking and bravery. Rescue points! All Might shouted. The panel of judges was astounded. Usually, students destroy the threat. You neutralized it without firing a shot. Rescue points, 60. Total, 105 points. All Might smiled. But there is one more thing. The hologram flickered. All Might was pushed aside. Principal Nezu's face filled the screen. Hello, Midoriya-kun. Nezu chirped. Regarding your performance, I am afraid I have to deduct 5 points. Izuku froze. You calculated the wire tensile strength perfectly, Nezu said, his eyes narrowing. But you forgot to account for the recoil of the lamppost. It nearly snapped and hit a window. Collateral damage risk. We will work on that, Nezu smiled. However, you proved my hypothesis. Intelligence is a weapon. Welcome to your hero academia, my apprentice. The hologram faded. Izuku sat there, tears streaming down his face. He looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. He didn't feel like a worthless Deku anymore. He felt like a variable that had finally found its place in the equation. He stood up. He had work to do. He had to analyze the structural weakness of the UA dorms before semester started. Just in case. The Windsor knot was a variable of friction and geometry. Izuku Midoriya stood before the mirror in his bedroom, his fingers moving with practiced precision. Over and over, he had practiced this knot under the watchful eye of Principal Nezu. Appearance is the first line of defense, Midoriya-kun, Nezu had said, adjusting his own red tie. If you look like a child, they will treat you like a child. If you look like an administrator, they will hesitate. In that hesitation you win. Izuku tightened the knot. It was perfect. Symmetrical. Professional. He pulled on the gray blazer of UA High. It felt heavier than the fabric suggested. It was lined with the weight of expectation. Izuku? His mother called from the kitchen. You're going to be late. You don't want to miss the train on your first day. I have calculated the transit time, Mom, Izuku called back, checking his watch. The 7:42 a.m. train has a 98% on-time arrival rate. Walking speed to the station is 1.4 meters per second. I have a 3-minute buffer. Inko Midoriya poked her head into the room. She looked at her son, his posture straighter, his eyes less fearful, his uniform immaculate. She smiled, though her eyes were wet. You sound just like him. That bear mouse principal. Izuku smiled, a small, controlled expression. He's a very good teacher, Mom. He grabbed his yellow backpack. It was no longer filled with just notebooks. It contained a tablet with encrypted access to UA's public servers, a first aid kit customized for quirk-related injuries, and a thermos of high-grade Gyokuro tea. I'm off. The classroom variable. The halls of UA High were built for giants. The doors were massive, the corridors wide. It was architectural intimidation. Izuku stood before the door labeled 1A. Class 1A. The Department of Heroics. Acceptance rate, less than 1 in 300. He took a breath. He activated the mental partition Nezu had taught him. Box up the anxiety. Label it irrelevant data. Archive it. He slid the door open. Don't put your feet on the desk. Huh! It's disrespectful to the upperclassmen and the people who made the desk. Shut up, Four Eyes. What junior high did you go to, you elite extra? The noise hit him first. Tenya Ada and Katsuki Bakugo were already at it. Izuku stepped inside. He didn't hunch his shoulders. He didn't look at the floor. He walked to his assigned seat, seat 18, and placed his bag down. Bakugo froze. He was mid-shout, his leg resting on the desk, but his eyes locked onto Izuku. Deku, Bakugo growled. The sound was low, dangerous. Usually Izuku would have flinched. Instead, he turned his head slowly. He looked at Bakugo's boots on the desk. That's standard-issue vinyl laminate, Izuku observed calmly. The friction from your boots will leave scuff marks that require an industrial solvent to remove. The janitorial staff operates on a tight schedule. You are creating a deficit in the school budget, Kaken. The room went silent. Ida stared. Bakugo stared. Even the invisible girl, whose clothes were floating nearby, seemed to pause. Bakugo's face turned a shade of red that defied the color spectrum. Ha! You think you can lecture me on the budget, you quirkless. I am not lecturing, Izuku interrupted, pulling out his tablet. I am stating a causal relationship between your behavior and the logistical efficiency of the facility. You wanna die? Sparks popped in Bakugo's palms. Oh. It's you! The tension broke as a round-faced girl appeared at the door. Uraraka Ochako, the boy who tripped the giant robot. She beamed, rushing over. You were amazing! I wanted to thank you properly. I tried to ask the teachers if I could give you some of my points, but they said, points represent individual merit, Izuku said, nodding politely. Transferring them would undermine the integrity of the selection process. But your sentiment is statistically significant to me. Thank you, Uraraka-san. Sure. Uraraka blinked, confused by the vocabulary but charmed by the smile. You look different. Less panic, why? If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The class turned. A yellow sleeping bag lay in the doorway like a giant, discarded cocoon. A face, unshaven and exhausted, peered out. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man muttered, unzipping the bag and standing up. He wore black fatigues and a capture scarf, made of a material Izuku instantly recognized as a carbon nanofiber alloy. Time is a limited resource. You kids aren't rational enough. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Shota Aizawa. Hero name, Eraserhead. Quirk, Erasure. Combat style, capture/subjugation. Teaching style, expulsion rate of 100% for the previous year's freshman class. Variable identified, the purge. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa, the man droned. Put these on and meet me on the grounds. He pulled a PE uniform out of his sleeping bag. The logical ruse. The sun was beating down on the PE grounds. The air smelled of baked dirt and nervous sweat. A quirk apprehension test? The class shouted in unison. But what about the entrance ceremony? Uraraka asked. The guidance counselor meeting? If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa said, turning his back to them. UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He looked over his shoulder, his eyes dark. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school without quirks. It's illogical to suppress your greatest tools. Aizawa pointed at Bakugo. Bakugo. How far could you throw a ball in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo scoffed. Try it with your quirk. Don't leave the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He grinned, a predator scenting blood. Boom! The explosion was massive. The ball vanished into the stratosphere. 705.2 meters, Aizawa read from his device. The class erupted. Awesome! We can use our quirks as much as we want? This looks like fun! Izuku watched Aizawa's face. The hero's expression didn't change, but the air around him grew colder. Trap, Izuku thought. He's baiting them. Nezu warned me about this. Aizawa hates complacency. He hates the concept of fun in heroics. Fun, huh? Aizawa whispered. You have 3 years to become heroes. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? Aizawa smiled. It was a distorted, jagged thing, all right. Whoever ranks last in total score will be judged to have no potential, and will be instantly expelled. That's not fair. Uraraka cried out. It's the first day. Even if it wasn't, that's too unreasonable. Natural disasters aren't fair, Aizawa countered sharply. Villain attacks aren't fair. Catastrophic accidents aren't fair. Heroes are the ones who correct that unfairness. If you wanted to hang out at McDonald's after school, you're in the wrong place. The class went silent, terrified. Izuku stood perfectly still. He analyzed the threat level. Expulsion. Is it a bluff? He recalled the data Nezu had let him see. Shota Aizawa expelled 154 students in his career. He re-enrolled 0. It is not a bluff. It is a filter. Izuku looked at his hands. He wasn't the strongest here. Todoroki, Ice/Fire, and Bakugo, Explosion, had raw power. Yaoyorozu, Creation, had versatility. Ida, Engine, had speed. I have one for all, Izuku thought. But I can only use 5% safely. If I use 100%, I break my bones and fail the subsequent tests, resulting in last place. If I use 0%, I am physically weaker than the mutation types. I need to optimize. Every millimeter. Every millisecond. Welcome to UA's hero course, Aizawa said. Plus Ultra. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida Tenya vs. Ajui Tsuyu. Ida, 3.04 seconds. Ajui, 5.58 seconds. Izuku stood at the starting line next to Bakugo. Don't cry when you eat my dust, Deku, Bakugo hissed. Red eat. The robot drone beeped. Analysis, Izuku thought, his eyes glowing slightly. Bakugo propels himself with explosions directed backward. This creates a high initial velocity but unstable aerodynamics. I cannot beat his raw thrust. Start. One for all, full cowl. 5%. Green lightning crackled over Izuku's skin. He didn't launch himself with a standard sprint. He dropped low, channeling power into his toes. Boom. Bakugo flew forward, explosions ripping the air. Izuku burst forward. He wasn't flying. He was running with superhuman efficiency. He stayed directly behind Bakugo. Drafting, Izuku calculated. Bakugo is displacing the air mass. If I stay in his slipstream, I reduce drag by 30%. Bakugo crossed the line. 4.13 seconds. Izuku crossed a heartbeat later. 5.51 seconds. It was fast. Much faster than his middle school record of 7.02. Bakugo turned around, sneering. Slow. I shaved 1.5 seconds off my personal best without using destructive force, Izuku noted, checking his pulse. And I conserved 90% of my stamina for the remaining tests. You, however, are panting. Bakugo choked on his breath. He was panting slightly. Shut up. Aizawa watched from the sidelines, marking his tablet. He's not trying to win the sprint. He's trying to survive the marathon. Test 2, grip strength. Shoji Mizo, 540 kilograms. Izuku took the dynamometer. He gripped it. If I use 100%, I break the device. The cost of replacement is 24,000 yen. Nezu would be displeased. He channeled 5% into his forearm flexors. He squeezed. Beep. 56 kilograms. Weak, Ciro Hanta laughed. I got these tape elbows and I still got 60. Izuku frowned. Inefficient. The machine measures peak static force, not sustained grip. My control at 5% is still fluctuating. He looked over at Uraraka. She was using her quirk to make the machine weightless, but realized that didn't help with grip strength. She looked panicked. Uraraka-san, Izuku whispered. Don't squeeze with your fingers. Squeeze with your latissimus dorsi. Pull your shoulder back. She tried it. Her score went up by 10 kilograms. She gave him a thumbs up. Test 3, standing long jump. Aoyama Yuga used his naval laser to blast himself across the sandbox. Bakugo flew across. Izuku stood at the edge. Vector calculation. Jump angle 42 degrees. Force output, 5%. He crouched and sprang. The green lightning flared. He cleared the sandbox easily, landing in a perfect roll to dissipate momentum. Clear, the machine beeped. He wasn't the flashiest. He wasn't the loudest. But he was consistently clearing the benchmarks. Test 5, the ball throw. This was it. The separator. Uraraka stepped up. She touched the ball. It floated. She slapped it. Infinity, the machine read. The class lost their minds. Infinity? That's cheating. It's physics, Izuku muttered. Zero gravity means zero friction degradation over distance until atmospheric drag eventually stops it, which could take hours. Then, it was Izuku's turn. He walked to the circle. He picked up the ball. He could feel the eyes. Bakugo's burning glare. Ida's analytical stare. And Aizawa's tired, predatory gaze. Score check, Izuku thought. I am currently ranking somewhere in the middle. Maybe 12th or 13th. But Mineta and Hagakure are struggling. I am not in the safe zone yet. If I throw this normally with 5%, I get maybe 150 meters. That's good, but not hero level. If I use 100% on my arm. I break the arm. I cannot do the remaining tests. I take last place. He looked at the ball. Nezu said, when the parameters of the game are rigged against you, change the game. He wound up. He decided to use 100%, but only for a microsecond. Only at the point of release, one for all, he swung his arm. He felt the power surge. Smash, the power vanished. His arm felt empty. The ball flopped out of his hand and rolled a pathetic 46 meters. What? Izuku blinked. The lightning was gone. I erased your quirk. The voice was cold. Aizawa stood there, his hair defying gravity, his eyes glowing red. The capture scarf was floating around him like a nest of vipers. That entrance exam was definitely not rational enough, Aizawa said, walking closer. Even a kid like you was accepted. Izuku didn't panic. He didn't shake. He stared at the glowing red eyes. Floating hair. Erasure. You erased my quirk, Izuku stated calmly. Because you judged that I would break my arm. I saw the footage, Aizawa said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You can't control it, can you? You're going to incapacitate yourself again. And then who will save you? Aizawa's scarf shot out, wrapping around Izuku, pulling him close. Their faces were inches apart. There is a certain insufferable hero who made a name for himself by saving people regardless of the cost to himself. You have his power, don't you? But you don't have his durability. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Midoriya Izuku. You cannot become a hero with that power. The class watched in silence. Bakugo was grinning. Finally. Reality check. Izuku looked into Aizawa's eyes. He felt the constriction of the scarf. He's testing my psychological resilience. He's trying to break my ego. Izuku took a breath. And then, he did something Aizawa didn't expect. He smiled. Not a hero smile. A polite, administrative smile. Aizawa-sensei, Izuku said, his voice steady. According to the UA Charter, Article 4, Section 2, discrimination based on quirk control variance is prohibited during instructional hours, provided the student does not pose an immediate lethal threat to others. Aizawa blinked. The red glow in his eyes wavered for a fraction of a second. Furthermore, Izuku continued, his eyes scanning Aizawa's face. Your quirk, erasure, requires a continuous line of sight. Your blinking interval is currently 28 seconds due to dry eye syndrome. You are using eye drops frequently, aren't you? There is a slight inflammation in your tear ducts. Aizawa stiffened. The scarf loosened slightly. You are projecting your own bias onto me, sensei, Izuku said softly. You assume I intended to break my arm. That is a logical fallacy based on historical data from the entrance exam. You failed to account for the variable of adaptation. Izuku pointed at the scarf. Also, that scarf is a carbon wire alloy woven into a specialized fabric. It reacts to your electrical signals. A capture weapon. Very efficient. But it relies on the target being intimidated. Izuku leaned forward, looking the underground hero in the eye. I am not intimidated, Eraserhead. I am calculating. Aizawa stared. The silence stretched for 3 agonizing seconds. Then Aizawa blinked. His hair fell down. TCH. He released the scarf. He stepped back. You have a smart mouth, kid, Aizawa muttered, rubbing his eyes. But logic doesn't throw a ball. You have 1 try left. Get it over with. Izuku stepped back into the circle. He returned my quirk. Now, he picked up the ball. I can't break my arm. I proved I have the mind. Now I must prove I have the capability. He thought back to the beach. The refrigerator. The fulcrum. Focus the energy. Not in the whole arm. That's a waste. He held the ball in his palm. He prepared to throw it like a baseball. 1 for all, flowing. He initiated the throwing motion. His hips rotated. His shoulders snapped forward. At the very last moment, as the ball was leaving his fingertips, he channeled 100% of the power into his index finger. Smash! He flicked his finger. But he didn't hit the ball directly with the bone. He hit the air directly behind the ball. The shockwave generated by the finger flick created a massive, compressed air cannon. The pressure wave caught the ball and launched it. Boom! The air exploded. A dust cloud kicked up. The ball screamed into the sky, riding the shockwave like a surfer on a tsunami. It pierced the clouds. Izuku stood there. His right index finger was purple. Broken. Throbbing. But his arm was fine. His body was standing. He turned to Aizawa. He held up his fist, the broken finger shaking slightly. I am still standing, sensei, Izuku said, mimicking Aizawa's earlier words. And my arm is operational. Aizawa looked at the device. 705.3 meters. He had beaten Bakugo by 0.1 meters. Aizawa's lips curled up. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had found a new puzzle. This kid. Aizawa muttered. DKU. An explosion of sound. Bakugo launched himself from the crowd. What was that? Tell me what you did, you damn nerd. He was fast. He was lethal. His hand was reaching for Izuku's face. Izuku didn't move. He didn't have time to dodge. Zip. The scarf wrapped around Bakugo. He stopped midair, immobilized. Whatever, Aizawa groaned, his hair floating again. I'm having dry eye. Don't make me use my quirk so much. Let me go. Bakugo struggled. We're wasting time, Aizawa said, dropping Bakugo. Next, Izuku walked back to the group. He cradled his finger. Uraraka looked at him with awe. That was terrifyingly cool, Deku-kun. Ida adjusted his glasses. You analyzed the teacher to his face? That is highly irregular behavior for a student. It was necessary, Izuku murmured, pulling a small roll of medical tape from his pocket and wrapping his finger. He responds to logic. If I had pleaded emotionally, he would have expelled me. The results. The sun was setting. The class gathered around the holographic display. The total scores are simply the sum of your ranking in each event, Aizawa explained. It's a waste of time to explain the weighting algorithm, so just look. The list appeared. 1. Yairo Zumomo. 2. Todoroki Shoto. 3. Bakugo Katsuki. 4. Ida Tenya. 9. Midoriya Izuku. 20. Mineta Minoru. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. 9th. He wasn't at the top. His physical stats without the quirk were average to high thanks to Nezu's torture training, and his 700m throw had boosted him significantly. He had beaten the students who relied solely on one gimmick, or had poor physical fitness. Mineta was shaking, crying on the ground. I'm expelled. I'm expelled. Aizawa looked at the class. He looked at Mineta. Then he looked at Izuku. By the way, Aizawa said, dismissing the hologram. The expulsion was a logical ruse. Ha! The class screamed. It was a deception to draw out your maximum potential under stress, Aizawa said deadpan. I knew it, Yaoyorozu said, sighing. It was obviously a psychological manipulation. The class relaxed. Mineta wept tears of joy. No, Izuku said. The class went quiet again. Izuku was looking at Aizawa. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp. It wasn't a ruse, Izuku said quietly. You really intended to expel someone. You expelled the entire freshman class last year. Your file says you have zero tolerance for hopelessness. Aizawa froze. He turned to look at Izuku. You looked at Mineta-kun, Izuku continued, and you calculated that his quirk has sticky properties that could be useful for capture and support, despite his lack of physical prowess. You looked at me and saw that I could manage my self-destruction. You re-evaluated the data in real time. Izuku stepped forward. You didn't lie about the threat, sensei. You just decided to spare us. For now. Aizawa stared at the boy. The wind blew across the field. Slowly, a genuine, creepy grin spread across Eraserhead's face. You really are Nezu's brat, aren't you? Aizawa turned around and started walking away. You're right, Midoriya. Nobody here was hopeless today. That's the only reason you're all still here. Go get changed. Curriculum sheets are in the classroom. He walked off. As the class began to chatter excitedly, relieved to be safe, Izuku felt a vibration in his pocket. He pulled out his phone. A secure message from Principal. Message, well played, pawn to e4. You survived the erasure. Now come to my office. We need to discuss the psychological profile of your classmate, Bakugo Katsuki. Also, bring tea. Izuku smiled weakly. He had survived day one. The aftermath. Behind the corner of the building, All Might was peeking out. You liar! All Might whispered to Aizawa as the teacher walked past. You really were going to send someone home if they scored 0 potential, I suppose, Aizawa shrugged. But that potential isn't just power, All Might. Aizawa stopped. He looked back at the students, specifically at the green-haired boy rapping his finger. That kid. Midoriya. He didn't just throw the ball. He dismantled the test. He analyzed my quirk, my personality, and the rules of engagement in under 30 seconds. Aizawa shuddered slightly. He's not just a successor to your power, is he? No, All Might admitted, sweating nervously. Principal Nezu has taken a special interest in him. Great, Aizawa groaned, rubbing his temples. A brute force powerhouse with the brain of the rat god. Just what this school needed. A chimera. Aizawa walked away, looking exhausted. I'm going to need more eye drops. The costume case was heavy, but to Izuku, it felt lighter than air. It was the physical manifestation of his transition from fan to player. The door to classroom 1A burst open. A cape fluttered, though there was no wind. Coming through the door like a normal person, All Might marched into the room, his silver-age costume gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The class erupted into cheers, but Izuku noticed the slight stiffness in the hero's gait. He's favoring his left side. His time limit is weighing on him. Foundational hero studies. All Might bellowed, flexing. For this class, we'll be building your hero foundation through various trials. Let's jump right in with this, the battle trial. Battle! Bakugo's eyes lit up, a feral grin stretching across his face. And for that, you need these. All Might pointed to the wall, where rows of numbered cases slid out. Costumes made based on your quirk registrations and requests sent in before school started. Awesome! Get changed and meet at ground beta. The gear. The locker room was a flurry of fabric and excitement. Midoriya, man, you got a lot of gear in there, Kirishima noted, admiring the complexity of Izuku's case. I just asked for something tough, but yours looks like a Spec Ops kit. Izuku opened the case. He stared at the green fabric. It wasn't the simple jumpsuit his mother had bought in the original timeline. This was a prototype suit funded by UA's special education budget, a perk of being Nezu's personal student. He pulled it on. The base was a dark, forest green jumpsuit made of reinforced Kevlar weave, fire-resistant and insulated against electrical discharge. On his belt were pouches filled with items Nezu had insisted upon: flash bangs, high-tensile capture tape, smoke pellets, and a grappling hook. Over his face, he wore a metallic mouth guard that filtered toxins and a visor with a heads-up display, HUD, linked to UA's local network. It didn't have bunny ears. It looked like a tactical helmet, sleek and intimidating. Whoa, Deku! Uraraka ran up to him as they gathered at ground beta. She was wearing her pink and black suit. You look so serious. Like a soldier. Izuku adjusted his gloves. They were reinforced to dampen the recoil of his air flicks. Principal Nezu said that if I'm going to be the administrator of justice, I shouldn't dress like a mascot. Function over form. He looked at Uraraka. Your suit helps mitigate the nausea from your quirk by stimulating pressure points, right? It's a good design. Uraraka blushed. Yeah. Though it's a little tight. Sensei. Ida raised his hand, fully clad in armor that looked like a sleek vehicle. Regarding the trial. Will we be conducting urban warfare? Correct. All Might grinned, holding up a script. You will be split into heroes and villains for 2-on-2 indoor battles. The villains guard a nuclear weapon. The heroes must secure it or capture the evildoers within the time limit. All Might held up a box. Teams will be determined by lots. Izuku felt a chill. Probability theory suggests. Team A, Midoriya Izuku and Uraraka Ochako. Team D, Bakugo Katsuki and Ida Tenya. Izuku froze. He looked across the crowd. Bakugo was staring at him. The look wasn't just angry, it was predatory. The veins in his forehead were pulsing. First match. All Might announced. Team A are the heroes. Team D are the villains. Everyone else, head to the monitor room. As the other students left, Izuku felt the weight of the situation. This wasn't just a test. This was the first time he would face his tormentor on equal footing. Or rather, on unequal footing. Bakugo was a combat genius. Izuku was a novice with a power he could barely control. Midoriya-kun? Uraraka asked, noticing his trembling. Are you okay? We're up against Bakugo. Izuku took a deep breath. He tapped his helmet, activating the comms. I'm okay, Uraraka-san. I'm just calculating the setup. Inside the building, Team Villain was arguing. Bakugo-kun. Ida chopped the air. We must coordinate our defense. I suggest we barricade the room and create a choke point at the door. Shut up, Bakugo growled, pacing near the bomb. You guard the toy. I'm going hunting. Hunting? That is not the objective. The objective is to protect the weapon. The objective, Bakugo hissed, sparks popping in his palms, is to show that damn nerd that he's still a pebble. I don't care about the nuke. I'm going to crush him. Bakugo stormed out of the room. Wait! The comms! Ida yelled. Don't need them. Bakugo ripped his earpiece out and crushed it. Outside, Izuku was studying a holographic blueprint projected from his wrist computer. Okay, Izuku muttered. Standard 5-story reinforced concrete structure. The weapon is likely on the 4th or 5th floor to force us to traverse the maximum distance. Bakugo knows I analyze things. He expects me to be cautious. So, what's the plan? Uraraka asked, punching the air nervously. Izuku looked at the building. Then he looked at Uraraka. Uraraka-san. Can you make yourself float silently? Silently? Well, if I take off my boots, yeah? Good. Here is the strategy. Izuku handed her a roll of capture tape. We aren't going to fight them. We're going to haunt them. Haunt them? Bakugo is aggressive. He'll come for me immediately. He'll abandon the objective. That leaves Ida alone with the bomb. But Ida is disciplined. He'll fortify the room. Izuku pointed to a ventilation grate on the blueprints. I will draw Bakugo's aggro. I will turn this building into a nightmare for him. While he's distracted, you flank through the external windows using your float. Don't engage Ida until I give the signal. What signal? When the building shakes, Izuku said darkly. Start. All Might's voice boomed over the speakers. The encounter. Izuku and Uraraka entered through a window on the 1st floor. The interior was dim, lit only by flickering fluorescent strips. They moved down the hallway. Izuku walked in the center, making no attempt to hide his footsteps. Come and get me, Kaken. He didn't have to wait long. Deku! Bakugo rounded the corner like a missile. No hesitation. No strategy. Just pure, unadulterated violence. He launched a right hook, an explosion already priming in his palm. In the past, Izuku would have flinched. He would have frozen, but Nezu's voice echoed in his head, observe the vector. The shoulder drops before the strike. The hips rotate. Izuku didn't block. He didn't punch back. He dropped. Using full call at 3%, Izuku collapsed his stance, sliding directly under Bakugo's swinging arm. The explosion detonated above him, singing his hair but missing his body. What? Bakugo's momentum carried him forward. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's outstretched arm. Not to throw him. He wasn't strong enough to throw Bakugo one-handed yet, but to pivot. Izuku spun around Bakugo's arm, using the momentum to swing himself behind the blonde. Uraraka, go! Izuku yelled. Uraraka touched herself, became weightless, and launched herself up the stairwell, passing over the confused Bakugo. Bakugo turned around, his face twisted in rage. You little! Don't look away from me! He fired a blast at Uraraka. Izuku stepped in. He pulled a small metal sphere from his belt and threw it. Flash bang, bang. A blinding white light filled the narrow corridor. Bakugo screamed, clutching his eyes. My eyes! When the spots cleared, the hallway was empty. Uraraka was gone. Izuku was gone. You're dead! Bakugo roared. You hear me? Dead? The ghost in the machine. Bakugo rampaged through the 2nd floor. He checked every room. He blasted doors off their hinges. Come out! Stop hiding! He entered a large storage room. It was filled with pillars and crates. Suddenly, the lights went out. Click. Total darkness. What the hell? Bakugo blinked. The flash bang had already messed with his night vision. Now, he was blind. He cut the power. Bakugo realized. That nerd, he knows the breaker box location. A whisper echoed through the room. Kaken. Bakugo spun around, blasting the air. Show yourself. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. You're so angry, Kaken. Your heart rate is elevated. Cortisol levels rising. That makes your sweat production inconsistent. Shut up. Bakugo fired an explosion at the ceiling. Debris fell. Izuku was crouching inside a ventilation shaft. His voice projected through the metal ductwork that ran along the perimeter of the room. He wasn't even in the room with Bakugo. He was safe in the walls. You always thought I was looking down on you, Izuku's voice whispered, distorted by the metal. But I was just looking at you. Analyzing you. You have a tell, Kaken. When you swing your right arm, you leave your ribs exposed for 0.4 seconds. I don't have a weakness. Bakugo screamed. He was sweating profusely now. The darkness was suffocating. He felt like he was being hunted. In the monitor room, the class watched in stunned silence. This is... Kirishima gulped. This is kinda scary, guys. Midoriya isn't fighting him. He's dissecting him. It's psychological warfare, Momo Yayorozu observed, her eyes glued to the screen showing Izuku's thermal signature in the vent. Bakugo relies on intimidation. Midoriya has flipped the script. He's making Bakugo feel small. All Might watched, a bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. Principal Nezu, what have you taught this boy? He's fighting like a villain. Back in the dark room, Bakugo was panting. He couldn't see anything. Every shadow looked like Deku. Why are you afraid, Kaken? I'm not afraid. Then why are you shaking? Bakugo roared and unleashed a massive explosion, lighting up the room. For a split second, the flash illuminated the space. There was no one there, but he saw something on the floor. Capture tape. It was strung between the pillars at ankle height. A web. He trapped the room. Bakugo realized. If I had run forward, I would have tripped. He looked down. He was standing in a puddle of water. Wait. Water? Fire suppression system, Izuku's voice whispered. You set off the heat sensors with your last blast. The sprinklers will activate in 3, 2, hiss. Cold water rained down from the ceiling. Bakugo stood there, drenched. His nitroglycerin sweat washed away. His gauntlets sputtered. You! Bakugo trembled. You planned this. You made me sweat, just to wash it off. I told you, Izuku's voice said, no longer a whisper. I'm not playing hero versus villain. I'm playing chess. The siege. On the 5th floor, Ida Tenya paced nervously. Bakugo-kun is not responding. The lights are out. This is highly irregular. Ida had cleared the room of all loose objects to prevent Uraraka from using them as projectiles. He stood by the weapon, guarding it with his life. Come, hero! Ida practiced his villain voice. I, the nefarious, engine man. Will stop you! He heard a tap on the window. Ida spun around. An external breach? The window shattered. But no one came in. Instead, a canister rolled across the floor. Smoke grenade. Thick, gray smoke filled the room instantly. I cannot see! Ida coughed, waving his arms. Ventilation. I must open the door. He ran toward the door to create a draft. As he reached for the handle, the door was kicked open from the outside. Izuku stood there, silhouetted by the emergency lights in the hallway. He wore his visor, the green HUD glowing through the smoke. Villain located, Izuku said robotically. Midoriya-kun! Ida shouted. You face me alone? Where is Uraraka-kun? Strategy requires misdirection, Izuku said. He raised his arm. Green sparks danced. Ida assumed a combat stance. You cannot defeat my speed in close quarters. I don't intend to. Izuku pointed his palm at the floor. Delaware smash. Air Force. He flicked his finger. Not at Ida, but at the ground between them. The shockwave tore up the floor tiles. Debris flew everywhere. Ideally, this would create cover, but Ida was fast. Recipro burst. Ida accelerated through the debris, closing the gap in an instant. He raised his leg for a kick. Izuku's eyes widened. Fast. Faster than 5%. He couldn't dodge. He had to block. Izuku crossed his arms. Ida's kick slammed into his guard, sending him flying back into the hallway. He crashed into the wall, the breath knocked out of him. "You are clever, Midoriya-kun," Ida shouted from the smoke. "But you lack the raw specs to overpower me." Izuku slumped against the wall, groaning. His arms throbbed. Heh. Izuku chuckled weakly. "Why do you laugh?" "Because," Izuku tapped his earpiece. "You left the weapon unguarded." "What?" Ida turned around. While Ida had rushed Izuku at the door, the window on the far side of the room, the one that had not shattered earlier, slid open. Uraraka, who had been clinging to the ceiling outside, floated in silently. While Ida was monologuing at Izuku, she drifted over the smoke. "Release!" She dropped onto the papier-mâché nuclear weapon. "Weapons secured." Uraraka cheered. "No!" Ida fell to his knees. "I was distracted by the frontal assault. My attention was divided. Hero team wins." All Might's voice announced. "The aftermath, or not?" Izuku slid down the wall, relieved. "We did it." He stood up to go shake Ida's hand. Boom! The floor beneath him exploded. Izuku was thrown backward as a hole was blasted through the concrete from the floor below. Rising from the smoke, looking like a demon from hell, was Bakugo. He was soaking wet, shivering, but his gauntlets were glowing red-hot. "It's not over!" Bakugo screamed. His eyes were bloodshot. He had climbed up the elevator shaft after blowing the doors open. "The match isn't over until I kill you!" "Bakugo, stop!" All Might yelled over the speakers. "The match is over. The heroes won." "Shut up!" Bakugo aimed his right gauntlet at Izuku. He grabbed the firing pin. "Bakugo, don't!" Izuku yelled, backing up. "Those gauntlets store your sweat. If you fire that indoors at this range, if you don't dodge, you'll die." Bakugo grinned maniacally. He pulled the pin. The gauntlet blast. A massive beam of fire and force erupted. It consumed the hallway. It disintegrated the wall. Izuku had a fraction of a second. "Dodge?" "No. The blast radius is too wide." "Block?" "Impossible." "Counter." Izuku took a stance. He grit his teeth. He recalled the feeling of the entrance exam. The feeling of the ball throw, one for all. 100%. He didn't aim at Bakugo. He aimed at the blast itself. He punched the air. Detroit smash. The pressure wave from Izuku's punch collided with Bakugo's explosion. The result was catastrophic. The forces cancelled out, but the energy had to go somewhere. It went up and out. The entire side of the building blew out. Windows shattered for 3 blocks. The ceiling of the 5th floor evaporated, revealing the sky. When the dust settled, Izuku stood there. His right arm was purple and broken. His sleeve was disintegrated. Bakugo stood opposite him, thrown back by the recoil, his shoulder dislocated. They stared at each other. "You!" Bakugo wheezed. "You had a quirk, all this time, and you tricked me?" Izuku clutched his broken arm. He walked forward, stumbling. "I didn't trick you, Kaken," Izuku whispered, tears in his eyes. "I tried to tell you. You just never listened." Izuku collapsed. "Medical bots!" All Might shouted, already running toward the building. "Get them to the infirmary. Now!" The debrief. 2 hours later, Izuku was sitting in the observation room, his arm in a sling. Recovery Girl had healed the break, but his stamina was drained. He looked pale. Bakugo sat in the corner, staring at the floor. He hadn't spoken a word since the match. "Well," All Might said, coughing awkwardly. "That was intense." Despite the excessive damage at the end, the MVP of this battle was young Midoriya. "Wait, really?" Kaminari asked. "Didn't he, blow up the building?" "Ida was the MVP, Tsuyu suggested. He actually did his job." "No," a calm voice cut in. Momo Yaoyorozu raised her hand. "Midoriya is the logical choice," she stated. All Might blinked. "Go on, young Yaoyorozu." Bakugo acted on emotion, abandoning his objective to pursue a personal grudge, Momo analyzed, her eyes sharp. Ida prepared well, but fell for a basic diversion tactic because he focused too much on the obvious threat. Uraraka followed orders well, but lacked initiative. She turned to Izuku. Midoriya, however, controlled the entire flow of the battle. He utilized the environment. He neutralized Bakugo's quirk using the sprinkler system, a brilliant application of chemistry and physics. He coordinated a split assault. He utilized psychological warfare to degrade the enemy's morale. Momo paused, looking a bit intimidated. Frankly, his strategy was terrifying. It wasn't heroic in the traditional sense. It was military. He dismantled them. Izuku blushed, hiding his face. I just did what I had to do, and the destruction at the end? All Might asked. That was Bakugo's fault, Momo said bluntly. Midoriya acted in self-defense to neutralize a lethal attack. If he hadn't countered, the blast would have likely compromised the building's structural integrity entirely, killing them both. Bakugo flinched. All Might nodded. Correct. Always have a plan. Dismissed. The realization. As the class filed out, Bakugo remained seated. Izuku stopped at the door. He looked back. Kaken? Bakugo stood up slowly. He didn't yell. He walked over to Izuku. He looked him in the eye. You read me, Bakugo said quietly. In the dark. You knew exactly what I was thinking. What I was feeling. Izuku looked down. I've been watching you since we were kids. Of course I know. You beat me, Bakugo said. The words sounded like they tasted like ash. You didn't beat me with power. Your quirk is trash. You break your bones every time you use it. But, Bakugo pointed at Izuku's head, you beat me with that. Bakugo turned away. His fists were clenched so hard they were white. I'm not going to lose again, Deku. Not to your quirk. And not to your damn tricks. I'm going to become smarter. I'm going to figure out your game. He walked out. Izuku watched him go. It wasn't the total victory he had hoped for. Bakugo was still angry. But the dynamic had shifted. Bakugo no longer looked at him as a pebble on the roadside. He looked at him as a rival. A threat. Midoriya-kun! Uraraka cheered, popping up beside him. We won! That was scary, but we won! Yeah, Izuku smiled, touching his visor. We won. The report. That evening, inside the principal's office, Nezu watched the footage of the battle on a loop. He watched Izuku cut the lights. He watched him use the flashbang. He watched him neutralize the nitroglycerin with water. Excellent, Nezu purred, taking a sip of tea. You think so? All Might asked, sitting on the sofa in his skeletal form. He nearly died. And he used fear as a weapon. Is that okay? Fear is a tool, Tashinori, Nezu said. Villains use it. Why shouldn't we? Midoriya understood that he could not win a physical confrontation, so he attacked the mind. That is the essence of strategy. Nezu paused the video on the frame where Izuku was speaking through the vents. He is learning faster than I anticipated. He is shedding the victim mentality and adopting the controller mentality. Nezu turned to All Might. However, we have a problem. What is it? The League of Villains, Nezu said, his tone serious. My sources indicate movement in the underworld. They are gathering. And they are looking for a weakness in UA. Nezu looked at the screen, at Izuku's determined face. Midoriya has the potential to be the greatest hero this school has ever produced. But right now, he is a fragile king on a dangerous board. We must accelerate his training. Accelerate? All Might asked worriedly. How? Nezu smiled, and it was the smile of a creature that enjoyed chaos. The USJ trip is coming up. I think I'll give Midoriya a special assignment. Let's see if he can command a platoon. All Might sighed. Please don't break him, Principal. I won't break him, Nezu promised. I will forge him.